And now we're going to go to the next talk by Jean-François Toubeau, which is called Recalibration of Recurrent Neural Networks for Short-Term Wind Power Forecasting. Jean-François received a PhD degree in electrical engineering from the University of Mons in 2018, and is currently a postdoc researcher of the Belgian Fund for Research within the Power Systems and Markets group at the same university. His work mainly focuses on data analytics, which are then used as input for optimization problems in electricity market. So the floor is yours, Jean-François.
Thank you, Pierre, for the introduction. So this presentation will be centered around two main research questions. The first one is, how can we capture the temporal dynamics of the wind power using different architectures of recurrent neural networks? And then when the model is trained, how can we update this model with the new information that is constantly revealed over time? So to answer those questions, the presentation will be divided into 4 parts. First, we will describe the problem. Then we will compare different architecture of recurrent neural network, and we will show why it is difficult to smoothly leverage both the past information and the known information about the future, such as a numerical weather forecast. Then we will select the best model and try to improve its accuracy by recalibrating the model over time. And finally, we will try to quantify in terms of cost savings, the improvement of the forecast using actual data from the Belgian market. But first, let's focus on the problem that we are trying to solve. So the objective is to predict. So typically at 11 o'clock in day ahead, which means just before the day ahead market, the expected wind generation for the 24 hours of the next day. So an interesting thing to notice is that there is a delay between the forecast creation time, T0 at 11 o'clock, and the start of the prediction horizon. And this differentiates this problem from the traditional online prediction task. Also, in a deterministic setting, the forecaster is designed to solve a regression problem. So in a deterministic setting, we want to find the expected value of the wind power realization for each hour of the next day, knowing the past realization of the wind power before the forecast creation time, but also knowing some information about the future, such as the numerical weather forecast, but also knowing some static information, such as the location of the wind power plant, for instance. And so since the model can be expressed as a regression problem, we can use the typical regression models, such as polynomial regression or regression trees or neural network. And what is important is that the complexity of the tool that we will use needs to comply with the complexity of the task. And so we need to find a trade-off between accuracy and simplicity. Also, interestingly, we have regression models that are tailored to time series. So we have econometrics models such as ARIMA processes and their extension, but also recurrent neural network with the very well-known variant known as the long short-term memory, or LSTM, that will be used in this presentation. So the principle of recurrent network is not only to map the available explanatory variables to predict the wind power, but also to capture the dynamics of the wind power. And this is achieved by propagating the internal state of the network over time. But different architecture of recurrent neural network can be devised, and they all differ by the way they can process the temporal information. So let's first look at the encoder. So the principle of the encoder is to sequentially process the past information and to generate all prediction of interest at the end of the sequence. So this structure is very well suited to process the past information, but then it's more complicated to feed the tool with the known available information about the future. In contrast, the decoder sequentially generates one prediction for each time step of the horizon. And so it's really efficient to map the available information about the future to make the prediction of interest, but then it's not very well suited to take advantage of the past information. A slight improvement of the decoder is called the bidirectional decoder. And the idea is to say, okay, at 11 o'clock in DEHET, I have some information about the future, so numerical weather forecast, not only for all time steps of the next day. And so in the traditional decoder, to predict the wind power at 2 o'clock, we use the weather forecast at 2 o'clock and also the information propagated at 1 o'clock. But maybe that the information from 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, that the backward dependencies can also bring valuable information. And that's the idea of the bidirectional decoder, not only to take advantage of forward dependency, but also to capture the backward dependencies. And so the quality of those three models will be compared here with in a small case study. So we have used the data from Elia, which is the Belgian transmission system operator, aggregated wind power data. We have trained the model on 5 years, and we have tested all models on a full year 2017 using a root mean square error. We have also compared the three recurrent neural network models with a traditional feed-forward neural network, so the multi-layer perceptron or MLP, as well as an ensemble method called XGBoost. So for our particular data, we have found that recurrent models were able to slightly outperform the rival methods, and the bidirectional decoder was the best model, which could be explained by its tailored architecture to capture complex time dependencies. Also, we had access to the DEHET forecast from the transmission system operator that are publicly available, and we can see that our predictions are close to those of the system operator. And in the following of the presentation, we will investigate for our best model, so the bidirectional decoder, whether recalibrating the model over time can improve the forecast accuracy. Indeed, when the same prediction model is used each day with the same parameters, we may have two problems. The first one is that the model does not take advantage of the new information that becomes available over time. And then it is possible that the model is good in average, but suboptimal for each period of the year. And so we will try to recalibrate the model and specifically answering two questions. The first one is, what is the optimal number of days between two recalibration? So do we update the model each day or each week or each month? And then how many days do we use to update the model? Do we use the last months of data, or the last 2 months, the last 3 months? To answer those questions, we will first devise an ideal recalibration benchmark. Why ideal? Because the model will be trained on the past days, and then the P days to predict are used as a validation set. Of course, in reality, these days cannot be used as a validation since they are not yet realized. But the idea of the benchmark is to provide a best outcome that could be expected from the recalibration. The results are summarized in the table in the bottom left of the slides. And it's important to remind that the initial model had an error of 115 megawatts. And we can see that recalibrating the model can reduce that error down to 100 megawatts. The ideal frequency to recalibrate the model is 7 days. So we have to update the model every 7 days using 30 days of historical data. Training the model on a lower number of days typically results in overfitting the model on this very low number of data. And on the other hand, when the model is too rarely updated, we may not fully take advantage of the beneficial effect of adapting the model to the current condition. So practically 3 different methods will be used to recalibrate the model. The first one is to use a validation set in a classical way and to train the model on the remaining data until convergence is done on the validation set. The second method is to use all the data. So we don't separate a validation and a training set. We use all the data and we retrain the model on a number of epochs. so on iteration through the data. And the results are summarized in that figure for the bidirectional decoder. And we see that a number between 100 and 500 epochs leads to relatively stable error, which are even really close to the ideal benchmark. Then the third method is simple but very time consuming and consists in retraining the model from scratch every 7 days. So the results are summarized in this figure. And what is interesting to see is that recalibrating the model seems to systematically improve the results for all months of the test year 2017. In particular, the methodology 2, so using a fixed number of iteration or epoch, 250 in our case, seems also to be the best strategy, with results quite close to the ideal benchmark previously defined. Also, after recalibration, the optimal model shows higher accuracy than outcomes publicly available by the system operator. Now, we want to quantify in terms of costs what brings this improvement in terms of forecast accuracy. And to that end, we want to find the impact of the forecast error on the imbalance costs. Indeed, in case of real-time imbalance, the system operator has to restore the system frequency by relying on reserve. Both downward and upward reserve are needed depending on the sign of the forecast error. And the balancing cost consists of two contributions. First, costs associated with the capacity that remunerates the procurement of power margin, and then cost associated to the energy that is actually deployed by the system operator. So regarding the reserve capacity, it is sized with the goal of covering the imbalances for at least 99% of the time. And so what we have done is that we have constructed a distribution of the forecast error for all the tools that we want to compare. And that distribution, then we select the quantile so as to have only 1% of imbalances that would not be covered. And what is interesting to see is that the static model, so the model that we call static, is the initial bidirectional decoder that is not recalibrated. It leads to total cost for sizing the capacity of 51 mega euros. And our best model, so our best recalibrated model on a fixed number of epoch, allows to reduce those costs down to around 48 mega euros. But we can see that those costs are still slightly higher than those that would be obtained with the model of the system operator. But when we look at the balancing costs, so for the activation of energy, then we see that the recalibrated model with a fixed number of epoch allows to strongly decrease the costs compared for the static model, so down to a factor 2. And also the costs are also much lower than those from the system operator. And those big differences typically arise due to the complex structure of the balancing costs, which may, with regime switching, that may yield strong differences with a small improvement of forecast. So to conclude this work, it's important to remind that recurrent neural network is just a global framework and that different architectures can be used, and each architecture can have a significant influence of the prediction accuracy. And so it's really interesting to further improve the models, for instance, using an encoder-decoder architecture, where the encoder would process the past information and feed it into a decoder that would then process the known information of the future to make the prediction. Then we have seen that recalibrating the model can strongly improve the accuracy of prediction. In particular, the method using a fixed number of epochs seems to be a very effective solution. And then in the last part, we have seen that due to the complex structure of the balancing cost, even small prediction improvement could lead to substantial cost savings. So thank you for your attention. I'll be happy to.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jean-François. Thanks for the timekeeping and a very nice presentation. We have a few questions. You can add some extra questions if you wish for all the attendees. There was a question early in the presentation, and I think maybe this was clarified already. So what's the performance in relation to meteorological variables? I guess the person was asking actually thought you were not using weather forecast as input, but then you said you actually do, right?
Yes. So to be perfectly clear, we have weather forecasts from one meteorological station in Belgium. So we have access to their forecasts that are performed before 11 o'clock in the earth at one location in Belgium, and we try to predict the aggregated wind power in Belgium.
Okay, so you use weather forecast for a single location while you are trying to predict the whole output for the country.
Exactly, onshore only.
Sure. But it's still, you have to, hope that it's quite homogeneous, the situation over the country, right? Over the region.
And when we compare our tool with the prediction of the system operator, we have actually no idea of the information that is available by the system operator. So it's kind of a tricky comparison, let's say.
Yeah, that was actually my question. The question I added afterwards is about your comparisons. I see the point, you know, it's so nice that this information is there. You would like to use it, in your list of results to compare, but is the comparison really fair? You know, as you were saying, there's very different data as input. You don't even know what they use.
No, actually, we have made a step towards them, but we know that their tool, they don't implement it themselves. It's a subcontract, and so we don't really have information.
Okay, but talking about comparison, I think it's very nice what you did in the last part with the comparisons in terms of use of the forecast. Could you go back to this slide? Because there also, I think the comparison is very difficult to make, because when you put forecasts in the decision process and would like to compare, you have to be sure that decisions are also taken in the same way, right? Or made in the same way, sorry. At the end, so for the reserve, you had one about the reserve and you had one about the balancing, right? So, I mean, are you sure you're simulating the reserve quantification and the balancing, or say operation in the same way as they do? For you really there comparing their the cost?
Actually, what we have done, we have tried to be as transparent as possible. So regarding the reserve capacity, we have just computed the distribution of forecast error. And we have assumed that the reserve capacity would be sized only with error in wind generation, which is not the case, but that was our assumption. From there, it's just, I mean, the comparison is fair because it's just based on the distribution. And then regarding on the balancing costs, we have used actual Belgian data. So the actual cost structure from the Belgian system. And once again, we have just look for each time step of the horizon, the forecast error of each of the methodology, and then look at what cost it corresponds. So it may not be the best.
Yeah, there's a lot of simplifications.
Yeah, there is a lot of simplification, but just to make it as fair as possible, as transparent as possible.
Yeah, I don't think it's wrong, but I think one should be clear that it's kind of a made up process for having a good common ground for comparison. I think a person who works at the TSO would be, I'd say, a bit not worried, but say, okay, still, I'm not sure I would trust 100% your results because it's so much more complicated than that, these benefits might be compensated by other things, right?
Completely agree, and we try to be as clear as possible in the paper. So there we really emphasize all the assumptions. So
yeah. Okay, that's very nice if you do that in the paper. In 50 minutes in a talk, maybe it's more difficult to be sure you covered all your assumptions and limitation. So thank you very much for a nice talk. We have a last question. Sorry, it appeared afterwards. Did you compare your approach with other forecasting techniques? I guess it's boosting. You mean, yes. Jonathan, when you wrote GRB?
So, yes.
Oh yeah, so that was this table here.
Yeah, so it's not exhaustive, it's clear, but we try to take the let's say the most let's say relevant one in the really technology that are close to the one we use, and also an ensemble method to try to challenge the methodology a little bit. But yeah, when we when we do a comparison, it's really complicated to put as much effort in all the benchmark as we do in our methodology. So we try to do so, but we are always really careful when presenting the results that it's really based on on that data sets and on, let's say, the effort that we could make on the
Sure. I mean,
right.
it's true. It's always, but at least you tried. So thank you very much. So yeah, virtual applause to you, Jean-François.